everybody. Today we are debating human origins, evolution, or intelligent design, and we're starting right now. Ladies and gentlemen, thrilled to have you here for another epic debate. This is going to be a fun one, folks. Really fun in that we have a lot of experienced debaters on board tonight and very well read as well. So want to let you know, though, if it's your first time here, consider hitting that subscribe button as we are very excited for future debates. So for example, this Thursday, Kent Hovind will be here to debate the fossil record. Should be a lot of fun, and hopefully we'll see you back for that. And I want to let you know we're a neutral channel, so we don't have any actual positions as the channel itself. We don't have any videos that are, let's say, pro-evolution or pro-intelligent design. Instead, we just let the debaters who are guests come on and make their cases. So we were very excited for this one. It's going to be a tag team match, if you haven't figured that out, and it's going to be 12 minutes split by each side. Then what we're going to do is, after that 12 minutes split by each side, which will start with our friends on the evolutionist side for the opening statements, we will then go into the open conversation. If you have a question for the Q&A, feel free to fire it into the old live chat. And if you tag me with @Modern-DayDebate, that makes it easier for me to see every question and be sure that it gets in the list for the Q&A. Also, Super Chat is an option. So if you do a Super Chat, you can ask not only a question, but you can make a comment during the Q&A to which the speakers, of course, would get a chance to respond to, and it'll also push your question or comment to the top of the list. So we are excited to jump into this, folks. Thanks for being here to the audience, and most of all, we just really appreciate our speakers. They're bringing their passion here to Modern Day Debate, as we know that there are a lot of channels that would love to have them, and so we really do appreciate them spending their time with us today. So thanks so much to all four of you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Indeed. Should be fun. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
Yep, looking forward as well.
Absolutely. So thanks so much, everybody. We will jump into it right now. So our friends from the evolution side will be going first, as mentioned. And so RJ and Jeff, the floor is all yours.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. Here we go. Are you able to see that? Now let me make sure I actually can use this. All right, cool. So I timed this out, and it's pretty close to my allotted 6 minutes on my side, so I'll probably be speaking pretty quickly, so I apologize for that. All right, with that being said, hi, everyone. My name is Jeff, and I will be arguing that we as humans are a product of evolution by natural selection. Now, I'm not a scientist. I don't have a higher learning education in evolution. I'm just a regular dude who's interested in advocating for scientific literacy and who's done some reading into the subject. But even I can say unequivocally that evolution is true, and all life on Earth, including our own, is a result of evolution by natural selection. If you do a deep dive into the subject matter, evolution can become an unbelievably complicated topic, but the basics can be easily understood by anyone, and I will be covering mainly the basics here. So let's define the terms here before we move on. Evolution is simply the change in the heritable characteristics of biological populations over successive generations, and natural selection is just the process whereby organisms better adapted to their environment tend to survive and produce more offspring. To clarify, the observed fact that we see is a change in heritable characteristics of biological populations. Evolution is our explanation for how these changes occur. So, much like the theories of gravity, heliocentrism, and the germ theory of disease, to understand evolution is to accept evolution. You cannot understand these concepts and simultaneously deny them. The only way to deny any of these concepts is to misunderstand them. It's not a religion, it's not a belief system, it's testable and verifiable knowledge. There is no such thing as an evolutionist. So, evolution, how does it work? Well, for a quick example, let's look at the giraffe. The giraffe has a long neck that's specialized for helping them to reach their food source high up in the trees. Specialized, you might say, doesn't that insinuate there's an intelligence behind it? On the contrary, this change can easily be explained by these concepts of evolution and natural selection. In the African savannas, where food is scarce for giraffes, these giraffes, which were better adapted for their environment, in this case with longer necks, were able to outcompete their shorter-necked counterparts and were more likely to pass their genes on. In this way, the trait of long neck was selected for due to external pressures. Over thousands and thousands and thousands of years, the long-necked giraffes did a better job of passing their genes down, resulting in giraffes we see today with longer necks, longer legs, and a physiology which can support them. Now, How does this apply to humans? We see something very similar in humans. Thanks to the fossil record and genetic sequencing, we know that our ancestors originated in Africa. As our ape-like ancestors moved out of Africa north into Eurasia, we see changing traits such as lightening of skin to accommodate for their new colder environments, and reduction in mandible size with the advent of fire and normalization of cooking foods. Same principles, different species. More recently, we've developed even more human-like traits: bipedalism, large and complex brains, the ability to develop and use tools, capacity for language, etc. And very, very slowly, over thousands and thousands and thousands of generations, we've ended up where we are today. We're still under the pressures of evolution, and in another million years or two, we might not even recognize our descendants as the same species as ourselves. So how have we arrived at this conclusion? Well, first of all, through proper application of the scientific method. Scientists have gathered all the evidence they can find: the fossil record, genetics, anatomical comparison, molecular biology, biogeography, direct observation, etc. And then once pieced together, they've come to the conclusion that evolution via natural selection is the only reasonable explanation for our origins. This has been independently tested and verified countless times. Evolution can make predictions such as what kind of fossil remains we might find in particular geological columns. Plenty of people have attempted to debunk evolution, yet as far as I can tell, no one has written their findings in a scientific journal, had it peer-reviewed, and subsequently been awarded the Nobel Prize in Science for debunking one of the most widely understood and accepted theories in the world. Intelligent design, in contrast, is unable to properly utilize the scientific method. In order to conclude that we are designed intelligently, one must enter with the preconceived assumption that there is a higher power, or they must appeal to ignorance and saying, it seems impossible to me that this all happened by chance. Let's look at some common arguments made in favor of intelligent design. One popular talking point is the idea that all animals were made in their kind and cannot change from one kind to another. Or the I am not a monkey argument. Speciation, or the process by which populations evolve to become distinct species, is an observable fact. Evolution does not claim that a monkey gave birth to a human. It was a slow, gradual change. To put it in a way that might be more easily understandable, if we look at a color gradient like the one here, if we look at a color gradient, it's impossible to pinpoint exactly where blue turns to green or where red turns to yellow. However, we can look at any 2 points in the color gradient and easily tell whether we're looking at red, green, blue, purple, etc. So there is no evidence of intelligence in our origins, and in fact, plenty of evidence for a lack of intelligence behind our biology. I'm reminded of the giraffe again and its laryngeal nerve. The larynx and the brain are mere inches away from one another. However, the nerve that connects the two stems from the brain, goes all the way down the neck, and then loops back to connect to the larynx, adding about 20 feet of unnecessary nerve. This would make no sense if there was an intelligent designer behind the giraffe. However, it makes perfect sense if we understand that the giraffe's neck was molded by natural selection over thousands of generations. We actually have the same issue, just not to the same extent, as you can see here in this diagram. So we have other examples of unintelligent design. We have ectopic pregnancies, which kill the mother without surgery. We eat and breathe using the same tube. We can be killed by our own teeth rotting in our mouths. Our appendix can pop and kill us, and as far as we can tell, it's vestigial. We're not designed very intelligently. The rest of the main arguments for intelligent design can usually be identified and discarded as an argument from design fallacy, cells are machines, DNA is like computer code, etc., an argument from ignorance fallacy, which would be like, I can't imagine how it could be any other way, or our otherwise updated versions of the God of the Gaps argument. These have all been debunked so many times and so thoroughly that I wouldn't be adding much to the conversation by debunking them here. However, I'll happily do so if they happen to come up over the course of our discussion. In general, any appeal to the supernatural without proof of the existence of the supernatural is inherently inferior to a theory that does not need to appeal to the supernatural. So, in closing, our origins are very well understood by the greater scientific community, and other than a few outliers who are almost ubiquitously motivated by external factors, almost no one disagrees with this. Intelligent design proponents might appeal to the science by referencing scientific literature. However, 99% of the time, the writers of the papers being appealed to will agree that evolution is true and that we share a common ancestor with apes. If there are any points made by our friends from across the aisle here that we're unable to address to your satisfaction, I implore you to do some research on your own, and I can guarantee you that there are experts who either have answered these questions or who can give an explanation of our best understanding of the science. And with that, I am finished.
Thanks so much. We are going to kick it over to RJ for the second half of their opening. The floor is all yours, RJ.
Jeff brought out the basics of the thing: natural selection and inheritance with modifications based on natural mutations. That's the basics of it. Natural selection is an interesting argument because there's a big divide between young Earth creationists and intelligent design about whether or not natural selection is real. Intelligent designers more or less kind of dig their heels in and say no. Answers in Genesis is okay with natural selection because they need to have hyper fast speciation after the flood. Others over at ICR don't like natural selection at all. They're just doctrinally committed to it not being true. So there's a whole big bugbear. But over in the regular scientific community, natural selection, and let's not forget sexual selection, which is another dynamic, is just part of the natural science field. And you could find a vast science literature on it. I'm glad Jeff brought up the giraffe example, which is a really useful one, not only with the laryngeal nerve issue, but also how there's complete confusion in the anti-evolution position on it. The traditional creationist position was that it was impossible for a long-necked giraffe to have evolved from a short-necked form, unless you go to the Ark encounter today, whereas you'll find their created version of the giraffe is a short-necked okapi-like animal, exactly the thing that they have been saying was impossible after all of this time. Meanwhile, the intelligent designers basically dig in their heels. They don't want any change at all. They've never done any systematics on what they think is related to anything else. So the giraffe is a perfectly fine example of where there is an evolutionary literature and the biogeography issue and a paleontology matter and just crickets going on over in the anti-evolution side. Also, the fact that evolution can predict things. I could think of right off the bat. Fossils, my favorite, the reptile mammal transition probanognaathids were predicted 30 years in advance, down to their muscle attachments in the transitional stuff, which is us mammals. Sphecomermids, E.O. Wilson predicted those in the 1960s, along with his colleagues. That's the transitional wasp ant matter, and they had further research on that. And of course, Tiktaalik, more recently, the early tetrapod that was anticipated based on evolutionary grounds as to where you would go to dig for it and so forth and so on. So if there is a designer out there, that designer really loves evolutionists. They want to make sure that evolutionary paleontologists have the best chance available to find their transitional forms and keeps on supplying them to make them happy. The bad design argument, that if anyone brings that up, we can get into that. But the main thing that I want to be fascinated with is to get the model of intelligent design in terms of human origins, which is supposedly our topic here. That the problem is that you have basically an anti-Darwinist argument going on among anti-evolutionists in this area, not a positive argument. Are Neanderthals part of are they the same kind as we are, if you're proceeding from a creationist point of view? If they're from an intelligent design point of view, is anything related to anything? Are any of the various hominids related to any other? Literally, there is no discussion of this anywhere in the intelligent design literature. It's a non-topic. It's entirely a negative argument. So we have a ballpark to deal with here. Humans apparently are now on the field by around 300,000 years ago. They have very specific anatomical characteristics. We've got Homo erectus and the various allied species going on prior to them, including Homo heidelbergensis. And we now have the genetics literally directly available from Neanderthals and the Denisovans, which track down and match what we can see from the more recent period of about the last 30,000 years or so in terms of human demographics and changing. Intelligent design and young Earth creationism combined have never been able to account for this data field. So I hope that we'll get a really good discussion from Jesse and John offering their model of what they think. If we got into a time machine and went back to the very first human species, what would it look like? What would design events look like? How many design events are there? How would we be able to delineate this from natural selection and natural processes that are unguided? That's the argument I would be presenting, and any time left over can go over to discussion and Q&A.
You got it. Thanks so much, RJ. And with that, we will kick it over to our friends from the intelligent design side. Want to mention, I forgot to say up front, you guys, if you're listening and you're like, I like that, I want more, you can hear plenty more because I put the links of each and every speaker in the description box. So that way you can click on their links and hear more where that came from. Also want to let you know, with our lighting, I'm trying to figure this out. Well, I got a Philips Hue, basically a setup, so that it's supposed to be interactive. Like if we get a new subscriber, it'll turn green in the background in my room. And I'm trying to get it to where the chat will be able to actually click like exclamation point orange and it would turn the room orange. We're working on it. We're working out the bugs, new stuff. So anyway, thanks so much to John and to Jesse for being here. We appreciate it. We're going to let them have their roughly 12 minutes. And so, John or Shadow Dancer, the floor is all yours.
James, I'm gonna go first. When I'm gonna share my screen. Can you give me a thumbs up when the when the audio starts?
Will do. So anyway, thanks so much to John and to Jesse for being here.
As we discuss the origins of humanity,
we appreciate it. We're going to let them have their roughly 12
intelligent
minutes.
design is not only
John
the most
or
plausible
Shadow Dancer,
conclusion,
the floor is all yours.
It is also the most logical explanation. For
James, I'm gonna go first. When I'm gonna share my screen. Can you give me a thumbs up when the when the audio starts?
Will do.
I stopped. I stopped.
So anyway, thanks so much to John and to Jesse for being here.
As we discuss the origins of humanity,
we appreciate it. We're going to let them have their
Tonight, as we discuss the origins of humanity, it is my intention to showcase that intelligent design is not only the most plausible conclusion, it is also the most logical explanation for the existence of all life as we know it. I call Darwinian evolution through natural selection the greatest scam on Earth for a very important reason. As we progress to the evidence against this being a logical, plausible, and probable explanation for our existence, the level to which philosophers and academic elites use it to dismiss a higher intelligence. Tonight, as we discuss the origins of humanity, it is my intention to showcase that intelligent design is not only the most plausible conclusion, weaknesses of their arguments, it is also the most logical explanation for the existence of all life as we know it. I call Darwinian evolution through natural selection the greatest scam on Earth for a very important reason. As we progress...
Working.
There appears to be. We've encountered this sort of thing before, and it's always been due to human error.
I don't know how share screen can't work. I guess I'll just read my...
You see why I don't use screen share postings at times? You can get into these terrible messes.
I literally tested it with James before we started to make sure it was going to work. All right. Okay. Tonight, as we discuss the origins of humanity, it is my intention to showcase that intelligent design is not only the most plausible conclusion, it is also the most logical explanation for the existence of all life as we know it. I call Darwinian evolution through natural selection the greatest scam on Earth for a very important reason. As we progress to the evidence against this being a logical, plausible, and probable explanation for our existence, the level to which philosophers and academic elites use it to dismiss a higher intelligence will become clear. It is likely at least one of my opponents will attempt to use sarcasm and requests for papers and literature when confronted with the profound weaknesses of their arguments. Therefore, in an attempt to prevent these never-ending interruptions for requests for technical literature, I've created a publicly accessible folder with a plethora of secular papers from which my arguments have been derived. Obviously, this debate will go in many directions, but there are 5 positions which challenge the premise of undirected evolution through natural selection being a logical, plausible, or probable reason for our existence. First, adaptations of existing functions to account for environmental condition variance is primarily executed through epigenetic factors which do not result in new core functions. This is a known fact, and the epigenome genome is a fundamental element which has shaken the entire premise of evolution to its core. Not only are these adaptations the result of variable gene expression caused by epigenetics, they are not the result of mutations. Rather, are controlled modifications executed through read, write, and erase nanomachines. Second, it is my position that macroevolution is not proven by speciation, nor by variance within species. While Darwinists attempt to explain this with very slow changes over time, it is now known that literally thousands of genes and gene regulatory network components working in synchronicity are required for new body plans to exist. Not only must they work in unison, it has been shown extremely minor modifications are fatal in embryo development. While I do not discount that variations can occur on a contained level, it is my strong contingency that these are the result of reorganization and adaptation of existing data and functional capacity, not the creation of new information or functions solely through random mutation and natural selection. Third, the variation of transcription factors in gene regulatory networks result in a significant difference in gene expression. To date, the most studied of these are in relation to cognitive function and show 9 to 23% of variation between chimps and humans. It has also been shown these differences must work in unison, and any degradation of this, even to the level of point mutation, results in dramatic impairment or death. Not only does this showcase the extreme importance of gene regulation, it also decimates the relevance of similar coding genes in relation to final outcome. Moreover, the significant differences in non-coding regions of the genome become apparent for things ranging from introns, retrotransposons, enhancers, and promoters, to name a few, all of which have been dismissed by those against intelligent design. However, the discoveries made in the last decade have now made their relevance unavoidable. Fourth, it has now become apparent through structural biology that not only is the prescriptive sequence information housed in the genetic code required, it must also be geographically coordinated through dynamic real-time folding to enable full gene expression. This applies to interchromosomal data transfer, which not only forces acceptance of physical gene locations being vital, it also decimates the relevance of a similar sequence existing in another organism, but housed in a completely different physical location. Not only does this make sequence similarities irrelevant in relation to undirected natural selection, it actually lends credence to intelligent design. Fifth, the prescriptive information of our genetic code uses arbitrary values, the meaning of which is unknown without a translational mechanism. This semantic meaning is immaterial, and in no other context could be interpreted without the prior actions of an intelligent agent. It is an unavoidable reality that our genetic code is a four-dimensional programming code base unlike anything humans have ever conceived. When all of this is viewed through the now known reality that not only must the information exist, it must also be in a specific physical location in the genome, to conclude that foreknowledge of the desired outcome is not required for life to exist, requires those who dismiss intelligent design to suspend rational thought. Therefore, its initial creation by undirected physical process without the action of an intelligent agent is not only neither logical, plausible, or probable, but impossible. In closing, as you consider these arguments and expansion of them throughout the debate, ask yourself this: whose position is more rational? Is it those who conclude it is more logical, plausible, and probable that these things could not occur by chance? Or those who argue no matter how counterintuitive it is, you must believe this could all happen without its designer being required?
Gotcha. Thanks so much. We will kick it over to Shadow Dancer. So thanks. We appreciate it. And the floor is all yours.
Okay, give me just a moment so I can share my screen. Did that work? Okay. All right, so I'll go ahead and kick it off. Can we know from history that we have an intelligent designer? If evolution is true, we should see this reflected in the archaeological and historical records of man. Aluminum was not created by man until 200 years ago in the Industrial Revolution. This was found with animal fossils that are 10,000 years or more extinct. The majority of the historical and scientific community find as a reasonable story is that it is part of this plane's landing gear from World War II. For your convenience, I have linked the picture of that plane and its landing gear. No such item on there. This was found in London, Texas, with the unique metal composition you see on the slide. It is not rusted, and the technology to create it was not available to ancient man, so they claim. They invoke a meteor instead from an alien civilization and a hammer hitched a ride. This is not well known, but still taught in university as one of the oldest examples of Minoan culture, a proto-culture of ancient Greece. Tiles were not invented by the Greeks until the 7th century BC. Also, many interesting artifacts were found, such as these geometrically sound seals. Geometry we will discuss later. This bell you might know, found in a coal seam that was dated 300 million years, and yet it was inside a coal chunk. It has an alloy composition that historians say ancient man couldn't have been able to create. By the way, I do not list a lot of resources, and I've shown Google results because this is not some obscure information only scholarly circles are aware of. This is a newer find for the Babylonians. It was thought that Europeans were the first to use modern or contemporary geometry. We find that the Babylonians were using it in the 5th century BC. Cuneiform language is much older, and we can make an inference that they were using geometry at that time based on this language. We could have a reasonable conclusion that this language is not some proto-language, but well-defined and used intricately, as on the left side of the screen. We still use the zodiac they came up with today, and King Hammurabi had them codify astronomy in 1800 BC, 1400 years before the previous slide's tablet was found. I hope you are seeing a pattern here. What they think they know based off of evolutionary assumptions in deep time is being proven wrong again. This is a well-known site in Egypt, yet people and historians today still invoke aliens because of the preciseness of its construction. Interesting fact that it remained the tallest structure in the world for almost 3,000 years. I love Mesoamerican cultures. The ancient Olmec built these gigantic stone heads weighing up to 40 tons, quarried from 40 miles away from lava. That is basalt, and that is no easy task when these heads date to more than 1000 BC. In San Lorenzo, in that middle picture, this amazing monument, and it sure looks like the pyramids of Giza. The narration of evolution, natural selection, that we accomplish all of this came about by slow innovation is not a viable narrative. When we see that man was doing things far greater in the past than we are now, it is actually showing that we are losing technology. I have to go over this quickly. This is the ancient world term in historical circles for these primary 4 cradles of civilization. Please take a look at the dates. I like adding pictures because I can speak about Uruk, and these temples all day long, but a visual in the magnitude of these cities, the planning and technology, I think, speaks for itself. Top left is an artist's rendition of next is an artist's rendition of the Enki temple, and bottom is the real-time site of Eridu, the city of Eridu. Same here, real-time photo top left, the Narmer palette bottom, and bottom right, an artist's rendition of the site. These are catty-cornered to each other, but revealing the same thing, the artist's rendition, and then the actual site of these 2 ancient cities. Bottom 2 photos are the same, an aerial view of the city of Urlitau and a recreation in a museum of Urlitau of a temple within that city. There's also silk on here, which we can talk about the silkworms and ancient silk weaving later. This is considered the new world of ancient civilizations. Notice a pattern with the dates. The top left is the newest satellite imagery find of Chavin de Huantar, and it was commonly believed the Olmec was the mother culture in the New World. This recent archaeological site is believed to be 2700 BC, and the oldest disputed date of the Olmec is 3000 to 2000 BC. Look how similar these structures are to the ancient world. The top right picture was the oldest Indian site until recently, 1700 BC. But what is most fascinating is the staff god I showed on one of the previous slides. The same drawing of the staff god, which is the bottom picture, found 2300 BC, and the top picture is 600 AD. I see no slow change over time. They are easily identifiable and the same image. Historians claim the Tower of Babel is a myth, but a recent find called the Tower of Babel tablet dates to around 2900 to 2500 BC, placed it firmly about the time of Nimrod, who built the Tower of Babel. Look at the highlighted ziggurat on the left. Looks very similar to all the other monuments and temples I showed earlier. What does this mean? We share a common human ancestor. That means we share a common memory as well. Flood myths all over the world, dragons and cultures like the Inuits who didn't have contact with people for several thousand years, and similar ziggurat structures all over the world. The majority of historians do not want to see this connection, not because it isn't valid, but because it connects history firmly to the Bible, meaning we have an intelligent designer and a creator. Instead, those with doctrines in history invoke aliens or some other narrative to hide the truth of history. Our ancestors, the pre-flood or antediluvian peoples, are far more intelligent than us. We have lost technology and are trying to regain what they had. My question to RJ and Jeff is this: with all our modern technology today, how come we cannot understand the technologies of man 5,000 years ago? Thank you.
And so, always fun. And with that, the floor is all yours for our speakers.
Gosh, I have a lot of questions.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know where to start. That was, honestly, I was not expecting that angle. So I really like that. That was an interesting angle I wasn't expecting.
We can go into Mesoamerican pyramids, why they're not at all like the ones in Giza and are in a completely different time frame. We can go into the fact that her own source has silk at 8,500 years old, which is 2,500 years before the universe was created, according to young Earth creationism. We can have the flood myths. Egypt does not have a catastrophic flood myth. That's a notorious example that material comes in, which goes back to our sources. The two things that are missing here. One is an explanation of the human event of human origins and a consensus. So Jesse and John, please tell us, when did humans first appear on the earth? Give us a date.
Why don't you answer that question? Because I don't think anybody actually has a specific date on that. I believe the evolutionary timeline ranges somewhere between 3 and 6. I've seen some up to 55 million years ago. It broadly ranges on.
Tell me somebody who claims that Homo sapiens existed on Earth 55 million years ago. Any evolutionist who's ever claimed that in the entire history of the field.
Yeah, I've never heard that. The general understanding that
I was making a point that it ranges, and if you go Google it, you'll find the 55 million.
Not for Homo sapiens.
Is there something wrong with a range? Why is a range not acceptable?
No, not for Homo sapiens.
No, I was making a point, which clearly you guys didn't comprehend, which is RJ just asked me when the specific date was for from my perspective, and I was making a counterpoint,
and it's wrong
that we don't know when even from the evolutionary perspective, don't know when it happened specifically either.
No evolutionist
I'm not really sure
ever said that.
I'm not sure how that has relevance to the.
I want to know what you think, Jesse. When do you think humans appeared on Earth? I say 300,000-ish. What do you say?
I say 6,500 years ago, and I would actually like to continue to talk about the Mesoamerican pyramids.
Oh, good. Let's.
Okay.
All right, let's do it.
Did you know that each of them are actually within 8 degrees and actually last in the pyramids of Giza to the cardinal lines of north and south?
Oh gosh, so people can't figure out where north and south is?
It's just technology over time.
What are the Giza pyramids built out of versus what the Mesoamerican pyramids are built out of?
I think it's basalt over in Mesoamerica and then sandstone over in Egypt.
And the interiors of them?
Actually, I don't know that.
And so an Egyptian pyramid, which is constructed as a complete unit, built up as a modified mastaba out of limestone, which was obtained locally, that was designed as a tomb for the god kings, is structurally not even the slightest similarity, other than the fact that it's shaped kind of like this, than the small stone constructions that, in the case of Mesoamerican, the Olmecs and the Maya construction, they built them up as a series of layers. And the Aztecs did the same thing. They would build a pyramid, and then they would build a layer over that later on, and then another layer over that layer on, and another. And so it got higher and higher and larger over time. They were typically built as single units as the archaeology goes. Not at all like what was going on in Egypt. Plus, the chronology is completely wrong. When do you think the pyramids were built, by the way, Jesse? The Egyptian ones.
2800 BC.
And okay, that is 500 years before the flood?
Okay, so listen, when I was giving these timelines, these are secular timelines, all right?
Where do you get your sources from on what these secular timelines are, by the way?
From my history classes at my college, actually, and just by basically Googling them.
And do you also, I've watched your channel video that you put a link up to. You have a whole bunch of stuff there cribbed from Answers in Genesis and ICR. Do you fact check them?
Absolutely. I fact check all of them because what I do is I check the top 10 websites to make sure to see how off are they on this and how off are they on this.
But how when do you it comes fact check AIG?
But hold on, when it comes to secular timelines, they don't actually add up. That's why I showed the silkworms. One dating from 3500 BC, right? That's when they think that they started domesticating silkworms. And yet we've got this new archaeological find of 8,500 years. That's a huge spread of time.
So usually when this stuff happens, first of all, I would dispute some of these things that you showed, like a 300 million year old brass bell, unless I wrote that wrong. Usually we can either look at it as, is everything that we know about human civilization and about metallurgy, is that all wrong? Or is it just possible that we made a mistake in the dating, that maybe there was some sort of thing that encased this bell? I would have to look into this. I know a lot of times I've seen arguments for human footsteps encased or fossilized next to dinosaur footsteps, and usually these are fakes. These are somehow just misinterpreted or misunderstood. So without knowing exactly what these are, I would just say it's probably to appeal to a 300 million year old brass bell as opposed to like maybe we were wrong. It just, again, it's like Occam's razor. Like, what's more
The
simple
London
here?
Hammer stuff, that's all stuff that's been debunked
Well,
over and over again.
hold on, RJ.
Even the young Earth creationists are very leery of some of these examples. A lot of them are very, very suspicious. Andrew Snelling and others are kind of leery about this stuff. Jackson Weed and I included a section on it in the Rocks Were There because it's a long tradition of things. So
Well, let
I
me
want to
answer
get back.
Jeff back. Let me answer Jeff back really fast. So it's not a 300 million year old bell. It was found in a coal seam that is dated 300 million years.
According to whom?
What do you mean, according to whom?
Well, how do they know that in the case? How do they know exactly the provenance of that? Where was that account plus? Was it written up in a technical science journal in a detailed archaeological work?
So RJ, let me get this straight here. So a secular source and time and dating of the example that Jesse is giving using the methodologies which you love to pontificate about in the context of fossils as ultimate proof. Are you now suggesting that the dating mechanism is incorrect?
No, I'm suggesting that Jessie has gotten her stuff from creationist sources she doesn't fact check. That's what I'm saying. Would you? By the way, John, will you agree?
I love how you always go down the rabbit hole and accuse people of going to creationist websites, which is why the public folder I made available is only things from secular sources, because I actually don't hardly ever go to the creationist website.
I'm not accusing you of doing it. I'm accusing Jessie of doing it.
But my point is that if we're not, there's no point in having a debate where all night you constantly go on your diatribes about secular sources versus creationist resources versus did you fact check. It's counter the arguments with your own substance rather than constantly questioning and arguing about fact checking. That leads to no substantive debate.
So unfortunately, when you make like very bold claims that seem to go against all of the science that we know today, all we can really do is say like is go fact check the sources. And again, kind of like I mentioned in my thing, you say you have a lot of secular sources. I would contend without even seeing the sources that if they are truly secular sources, all of the people who wrote these, if they are scientific peer-reviewed journals, all the people that wrote these probably disagree with your conclusion. I've seen this happen all the time where creationists or people
but see the point you're trying to make there is whether or not somebody has a different conclusion of the evidence. That happens all the time. Like, for example, in one of the points you made in your opening statement was that cells are not machines and there is no programming, et cetera, which that is rather outdated. That's rather outdated.
No, that's not what I was saying.
I wasn't talking about you, RJ. I'm talking to Jeff.
No, so what I was saying is these are bad analogies. Like we can't just look at a cell.
That's the point I'm making. Is they are not analogies, and they are now directly recognized by the premier institutions and researchers around the world that they literally give TED Talks about this, where the opening statements are, "Hey, folks, proteins are literal machines. They are not metaphors." They literally start their discussions with this, and when you get into biological computation,
and they literally evolve too.
So that's not the point I'm making. I'm saying that Jeff literally. Well, we can go down that rabbit hole too, RJ.
Yeah.
So the point I was really trying to make,
you were discounting something and dismissing it because it's an argument made by people on the ID side and saying it doesn't exist, and now you're trying to say it's an analogy when it's been clearly delineated that it is no longer considered an analogy it wasn't really considered an analogy in the beginning either. It was actually, there was a short window where people were trying to go down that rabbit hole because I know you're correct me if I'm wrong, but you now work as a social media analyst professionally, right?
You must have looked up my LinkedIn, I guess. Yes.
The reason I'm asking that question is I'm assuming that gives you a little bit of knowledge into software development and A/B testing and all those kind of components, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Which is nothing like biology.
So you don't think that something that is Turing complete is equivalent to computer technology? Is that what you're saying?
I don't think, no. Okay, so when I say all right, so when I say that like a cell isn't a machine or that it's not code or programming that we know it, it might be a machine in that it has a task and it has parts that does the task. But the problem that I have with a lot of creationist rhetoric is they like to sneak in the idea of creation. If it is a quote unquote machine, if we want to reference it that way, that doesn't mean that there was a creator in the way that we look at machines now. If there is quote unquote code, that is because we interpret what we see, and the way that we interpret it and it filters through us, we interpret it as code. It's not like code code exists without a mind, without somebody to interpret the code. It's just ones and zeros, A's and whatever. I don't know.
But see, that is a completely false assumption you're making there, because there is no mind that is processing the binary code which is enabling us to have this conversation right now. There was a mind that built the translation protocols and components that enable the translation of the variety of programming languages that are being used for us to have this conversation.
Ooh, how do you know that?
Oh my God, RJ, we going back to this whole thing where you think that Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, and YouTube could come into existence?
No. I'm trying to get back to the topic at hand: human origins. What design events were involved in human origins, and can we all agree, except for Jesse, that there were definitely humans on Earth 100,000 years ago as a benchmark to start with? Can you agree to that, John?
No.
So wait, I'm sorry. Can I interrupt for a second? I'm sorry. Are you young Earth, or are you? I just want to know what your actual position is. I don't know if you're young Earth.
Honestly, I lean more towards young Earth. I think there's different variations of that in the quantum world that can be altering the timeline aspect, but that's a whole different debate.
Boy, you've just flushed most of intelligent design down the drain. Next, other than Paul Nelson, there's virtually nobody in the intelligent design field who is a young Earth creationist.
Would you mind kind of expanding on the what did you say? You mentioned you said young Earth. Oh, I totally forgot. You said something that I was hoping you could expand on, but I forgot what it was already.
But the point I'm making in all this is, and I mentioned this, and actually, and I wish my intro would have worked, because I actually had a whole bunch of diagrams and such that showcases.
You've seen them already.
I doubt it, RJ. When you look at the things such as epigenetic gene expression and variations, and the things that are being the adaptations, which up until relatively recently were heavily used by the evolutionist side as supposed evidence for it, are actually now being shown.
Do.
And okay, yeah, that's why there's a whole rift in the evolutionary biology world about how we can't go back to modern synthesis or extended modern synthesis.
Let's talk about that, shall we?
Okay, there's peer-reviewed papers on this, so yeah,
and I read them too.
and they talk about how the current format of Darwinian theory is not working, and one of the primary reasons for that is epigenetics, because it is modifying existing function and existing code base and existing information, prescriptive information, which results in the different outcomes. And it is not mutations that are resulting in these dramatic modifications. It's epigenetic.
I want to see your reference bibliography on that one. But are any of the people involved in that field?
Go for it. I have a whole folder for you, man. Go search all the way through it, because guess what? With structural biology, this is being discovered to be
I'll want to look through that and compare to find out my data field, to find out how much of it is already discussed in the anti-evolution literature. But I want to ask you to explain what of any of those people writing those papers, how many of them doubt natural common descent?
Again, completely irrelevant.
No, it's not. No, it's not. If they have a data field that's this big, let me get this in, please. If there is this data field that's like this, that causes them to understand that natural evolution is true, and you're looking at this little tiny little slice.
I'm not looking at one little slice. That's what you make the exact same point every time in all.
I know, and I'll keep doing it because
somehow I'm the one that's not looking at the big picture. You have such a myopic worldview, which is nothing other than the evolutionary model could possibly be true.
That's not true at all.
If you come out with a better one, measure how much of the data field the intelligent design movement looks into.
I've debated RJ before. I'm addressing this.
Okay.
RJ, you still refuse to even accept the premise of prescriptive information in the genetic code being required and it being arbitrary values, and that there is no chemical interaction between the tRNA or the amino acid being held by a tRNA and the codon.
Well, I don't claim that at all.
I'm pretty sure you denied the arbitrary value assignment.
Oh, I'll say this, yes, that the association between an amino acid and a codon triplet is not an arbitrary one. It is not like the coding that we have with logical plausibility written on the screen, ... None of those symbols are other than arbitrary code and images that are chosen to represent the thing, meaning logical plausibility.
RJ,
that's not what happens with DNA.
It honestly cracks me up listening to you and so many evolutionists make that
I hope
debate
so.
when it's literally the polar opposite is what is presented endlessly and taught at MIT, at Stanford, at Yale. Go watch.
Again,
hang on. They literally make the clear statement: there is zero chemical interaction, and they are arbitrary values. It's one of the things.
Describe what you mean by that. Describe what you mean by that, because I don't know what it is you think you mean by it.
Just okay. If it's for clarification, we'll allow a clarification, but then we'll let the point.
Clarify what you mean by that. No interaction chemically. How else do they do things but by chemical interaction?
Okay, this expresses your ignorance of protein synthesis, apparently.
Yeah.
So the codon in the mRNA interacts with an anticodon in the tRNA, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Chemically, is there any interaction between the amino acid held by the tRNA and the codon?
No, because it's the molecule that reads
so,
the one that connects up to the other. That's what's going on.
The ribosome, and this is a well-established premise, the ribosome is reading and confirming that the appropriate amino acid that matches the codon is the correct one. If not, it ejects it and halts the process.
We do have to.
And who decided what the codon assignments
We do in 1 second. Well, I just want to be sure that we also get to hear plenty from Jeff and Shadow Dancer. Don't get me wrong. I appreciate your guys' passion. And just to kind of mix it up, I promise we'll come back to you.
We're a long way from human evolution.
Then this is a great opportunity for them to tie it all together. So go ahead, Shadow Dancer.
I hope so.
Okay, so I have one favor to ask of you, RJ, to give me respect as a fellow historian. I do not have a single creationist website in that entire presentation I showed you. They are all secular websites. And actually, most of them are just Encyclopedia Britannica. But I do have a question about this.
The London Hammer didn't come from a secular website.
Actually, yes, it did.
Oh, well, then it must have been discussing why it isn't what the creationist thinks it is.
Yeah, they think it was aliens.
No. You must not have researched much about it. I have never had to rely upon an ancient astronaut believer to debunk the London Hammer. There's stuff on it at Talk Origins, among other places.
Well, this should be okay. So, Jeff, I got a question for you. So,
yes.
If all organisms really had a common ancestor, then we should see only continuity and not clear-cut gaps in between stuff. Like, basically, we should not be able to tell where cats stop and dogs begin. Right?
Why?
Because if it comes from uniformity, then we would all be able to reproduce with each other, and we wouldn't even be able to see gaps in between all these species.
No, okay. Yeah. So we're all eukaryotes, which means that we all came from basically a single-celled organism in over millions and millions, possibly billions of years. When you have that long of a timeline and you have enough creatures that are being specialized for certain traits, like generally creatures have niches that they fill, and you don't normally have a lot of crossover between niches. So you won't see like an entire savanna full of giraffes. You'll see the giraffes do their job, which is take the whatever from there. And this competition and these natural selective pressures over time form or basically change the traits of the animal, if you will, so that they can go in completely different ways. That's how you can have a nautilus at the bottom of the ocean, and you can have us. And if you go back far enough, you have a single ancestor. I mean, at the same time,
I could years on that one.
Yeah, and I could honestly kind of say something similar to about creationism. Like, if we all came from one man and one woman, how do we have so much variation in ourselves as human beings, assuming that humans existed as Adam and Eve, and we have all this variation, especially because Adam and Eve would have been genetically identical. it's pretty easy to
And the second
explain.
Well,
model
actually,
of
but
Noah
hold
and the
on,
kids.
RJ. But Jeff, that's actually making an assumption that God made 2 carbon copies. Why would he do that?
I mean, the Bible claims that he took the rib out of Adam and then formed Eve out of it. I'm just using.
Yes, but you're putting like an overarching assumption on there that he made us be carbon copies, all right?
So
you're
I'm going by.
You're making an assumption, though, all right?
I'm going by the story, and I feel like the assumption is being made on the other hand, where I'm going by the story, and the story says he took the rib and he made a person, which would have meant a genetic identical duplicate. I don't think any of this happened. So good God, as a all-knowing, all-seeing, sky wizard, whatever you want to call it, could he have made a genetic difference? Yes, but to me, that's a post hoc rationalization. That's looking at a story and seeing that there's something that doesn't fit and saying, well, it could have been done this way. So because it could have been done this way, I'll just have this fit into my story to make my story work.
Then how come? Hold on. But then how come in Genesis God talks about men and women being different and their different traits? If he did not make them genetically different, they would have been carbon copies of each other. Why can't men be asexual? They can't. They have to have a woman. Therefore, we are not carbon copies of each other, and you are picking and choosing what you want from the Bible.
I mean, if you believe this story,
actually,
then...
the funniest part about Jeff's statement is he literally described what evolutionists do to try and justify all of the random variations that aren't accounted for in their model, dismiss them, or come up with creative reverse engineerings of, oh, well, if this happened and this happened and this happened and this happened and they all happened in this exact order, then we could have come from X.
So and that's not how science works.
Yeah,
generally, if you don't know the answer, usually if you don't know the answer, we just say we don't know the answer, and we give like what our best. I say we, like I'm a scientist. I'm not a scientist, but I'll just use the royal we for right now. And they would basically give their best idea of how they think it happens. If they're making claims that are unsupported, then they're bad scientists. Like, I don't know what to say. If there's people...
Okay, if you're going to defend science right now, I think it's something like 60% of published peer-reviewed papers have had to be retracted because they're unreproducible. I mean, this has been... There's been scandals out of the yin-yang on this. In the one we're discussing right now.
Yeah, so it's usually related to ones in medical fields where people make money at it.
Okay. Yeah, it's not just medical. It's all
not in paleontology. How many paleontology
should we talk about
should we talk
about the CAD drafted spider fossil that supposedly came out?
This is getting dangerously close to the science is a liar sometimes argument. Yeah. Like,
that's not where I'm going with this.
I want to get to a concrete example of human evolution and the genome and Adam and Eve.
Yeah, so what you were saying, like papers are published. Yes, this happens all the time. People, they do an experiment, they test it, they might even test it a couple times to get the same results, and then they'll publish a paper. And then other people will try and replicate the results. And if they can't replicate the results, these papers will then be retracted. A lot of times it's... Yeah, I know, but I'm saying that that's a thing that happens. Like, that just exists. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, all science as a doctrine isn't debunked because some people I
never said all science was debunked. I'm speaking directly in relation to a lot of things in evolutionary biology that continue to be debunked. And but then history is rewritten as in, oh, we never thought this. No, here's what we actually think now. That is so a fact.
But Jeff, hold on, Jeff. But you also actually said this in the beginning of your presentation. You showed other scientific theories. Those are factual, right? And basically, you implied that evolution is so factual that it can't ever be retracted, right? And they've retracted paper after paper on evolution. Evolution 20 years ago is not the same thing as it is now. Yeah, right? So and they have to retract some
you were around 20 years ago to be sure of that?
I'm much older than you think, RJ.
Oh, okay. I want to ask a specific example to focus the attention on human evolution. We have ALUs in our genome. In fact, we got a lot of them. Did Adam and Eve, if you're assuming that there was just an Adam and Eve and not a population of the Homo erectuses or something turning into them by intelligent design tinkering of an existing population, when did we get our ALUs? If there was an Adam and Eve, how many did they have, and were there more in one than the other? And what was the mix of that in Noah and the kids if you follow a flood model, which I guess, Jesse, you do. So educate us on what you think about the origin of ALUs in our genome.
Well, I'll let John answer that.
well, first of all, the supposition that ALUs are after effects and there were none that were originally there is a total supposition.
I'm letting you do the supposition. Tell me how they got there.
I know what your argument is, though. You go on your diatribes
I
about
want
this
your
in our
argument.
debate about ALUs. And I am suggesting that, one, and it was in my presentation, which I get to show, there have been ongoing discoveries of the functionality of ALUs, retrotransposons, et cetera, in from a positive sense.
That's talking function. I want to know their
gene
regulation.
regulation. Okay. So, in conjunction with the argument, which I have made many times to you, is that this source code base that enables all of these functions to occur existed. It was created. That is the entire point of this.
Can you name anybody in the intelligent design or young earth creationist field that has given an accounting of why we have the ALUs that we have in our genome?
Don't care. All you ever do is
of course
ask
you don't care. Oh no, you have no model.
I'm debating.
You have an anti-model.
No, RJ. Unlike you, and it's why I put it in the very beginning of my opening statement, was I didn't want to waste time this entire debate and with you asking.
Lost that race already.
What does somebody else think? What does somebody else think? I'm telling you what I think, and I'm telling you why I think it. And you dismiss all arguments as being, out to lunch when you won't even. Let me ask you a direct question. How many positive mutations would have had to have occurred from the split from your model, the split from monkeys to man? How many positive mutations per generation would have had to have occurred to account for the 35 million or so base pair differences in the human and chimp genome?
Oh, gee whiz. An awful lot of those are, oh, yikes. That's a rather fascinating question. You're talking about, given the fact that we generate thousands per cell anyway, over the course of 10 million years since the split between the two and X number of generations, we're probably talking about just about the same rate that we're seeing in extant organisms. You don't know of anybody writing in genetics who claims that there's some radical change.
I'm asking you a direct question, because they would all, I've done the math before, all of the mutations would have to have been 100% positive at the genetic to account for 35 million.
Most of the genome are neutral mutations.
That's my entire point, which is when you account for the 35 million differences in base pairs, if they're all neutral, but we're seeing
90% of them are.
When we're seeing functional dramatic discoveries in the functional differences between chimps and humans, for example, then you would have to account for those functional differences. You would have had to been having not neutral mutations. You would have been having, per your model, you would have had to been having positive, specific new functions happening on a generational basis in order to account for the functions that we now see. When you're talking about, when you're looking at the brain,
which functions did you have in mind on that, by the way? Well, name a function, a specific one.
Primary, there's a plethora in the brain.
Yeah, well, name one.
There is a bunch of them, and go read the paper.
Let's take an example. Let's take the SRGAP2 genes that are related to synaptic development, brain mass, and cortical neurons.
Okay.
Is that one of the things that would be involved?
Now what has been discovered recently is that gene regulation results in dramatic up and down regulation of different genes that were once taken completely as, it's just humans and chimps had this exact same gene similarity, therefore it's proof. But now what they're finding is that gene regulatory networks, which are different, are directly the cause of dramatic differences in cognitive function, which I would argue is fundamental to the differences between monkeys and humans would be cognitive function. So when they're now finding these massive differences, and then they're also discovering the huge differences in the miRNAs and their effect in modifying the outcome of a gene sequence in thousands of different ways, you now have to begin to look at, okay, cool, we have source code fundamentals, but they're
by the way,
like using, as I discussed with you in our first debate, it's like using a plugin on WordPress and then trying to claim.
Yeah, that's
that
your mantra.
we-
Do you have your
That's not my
bibliography?
mantra.
Do you
It's
have your
literally-
bibliography of sources?
Huh?
Do you have your bibliography of sources up, the one that you're going to be posting so we can all
It's
look at it?
literally.
I'd like to see that too.
It's been in the live chat since before the debate started.
And also, hey RJ, I want
don't know
to.
okay.
Okay, I want to throw something out at you though. Okay, so
Yeah.
tying in with genes and cognitive and stuff like that,
Mhm.
we know just from human history that we are very, very inventive and we have ingenuity. All right. Do you
Mhm.
really believe that 2 million years ago, when they started using stone tools, that they used it for 50,000 generations or whatever, and then suddenly in the Neolithic revolution, oh my gosh, we're having all these megalithic structures and stuff like that?
Yeah,
Like,
How sudden?
actually-
How sudden are we talking about here?
Yeah, and sorry to interrupt, but just look at our current level of technological advancement since like the early 1900s. Within 100 from I think the first plane flew in like the early 1900s, 1915. From the time of the first plane flying going
1903.
to outer 1903, we'll go with 1903 to 1969 when we went to the moon. That's 66 years, and we made that giant of a leap. People working with stone tools to building big structures, which is basically like, I'm going to reduce this, but like advanced Legos, like, and I obviously know that's an absurd reduction, but that to me is not nearly as huge of a leap as what we've seen in our lifetimes, like the advent of the internet.
Okay, Jeff, I gotta ask you a quick question. You just equated that to advanced Legos.
Like I knew it was.
No. The reason I'm asking that is because let me ask you this: have you ever been to Europe?
I have, yes.
Okay. Have you ever been to any of the majestic cathedrals? I grew up over there. I've been to a bunch of them. Have you been?
I went to a bombed one in Munich that didn't really like. So no, not really.
Okay. So I graduated high school in Ely Cathedral, which was started, I believe, in 937. It took them 150 years to build.
Mhm.
That thing is phenomenal on the inside. The architecture, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, they're incredible.
They built it with no cranes,
Mhm.
no power tools, and they managed to build something that is the size of a mini skyscraper.
Yeah, humans can do wild stuff whenever we have
with
ingenuity and an endless supply of slave labor. I don't know.
My whole
that
point-
wasn't
Well,
built with slave labor.
that wasn't the case. Although you had surf labor, but it's another matter.
The point I'm making
I-
is that you're downplaying the intellectual requirement
No,
to be
I don't
able
think I
to
was at all.
pull
No.
off. If you're equating it with Legos, that means that you don't have to be very smart. to be able to
Just
execute.
don't go too
No,
much
okay.
on analogy.
So yeah,
Can I ask a question?
It might have been a bad analogy, and I apologize if it was. What I was trying to say is that I think the leap between just from what we've seen in our lifetimes within the past 100 or so years is probably a larger leap than saying going from stone tools to building big buildings made of stone. So I'm sorry if that analogy
Well, hold on, Jeff. Let me ask you a question. Do you even know when the Neolithic Revolution happened and what it is? Because I have a feeling that me and RJ know this, but you may not.
No, go for it.
Okay, so the Neolithic Revolution is when we stopped being hunters and gatherers, and suddenly urbanization, civilization, art,
Okay, yeah.
language.
And when was that, by the way?
Currently, what they're teaching me in my college, 55.
Know what
years ago to
you
10,000.
believe. Tell us what you believe. That's what we're here to hear.
Well, I don't believe that there
3,500
was. No, I said 5,500 to 10,500 is what
Yeah,
secular.
but what do you believe?
I don't believe that there was a Neolithic Revolution. I believe there was a flood,
Okay.
and then suddenly man came
What
back
would
out.
prove to you that the flood didn't happen?
That the flood didn't happen?
That the global flood didn't happen. What would it take to establish that in your mind?
Well, based on the fact that we see it in every single culture around the world, some
We don't.
type of
Not
flood
Egypt.
myth.
Not Egypt.
Flood myths. So
Hold
okay, I'm sorry.
on. No. Let me finish, all right? We've got
All right,
flood myths
sorry.
all across the world, all right? Which one is true? All right, the Athabascan Indians in Alaska have got a flood myth, all right? Native Americans in North America have got a flood myth. South America, okay? We might be missing Egypt, but I'm talking about, just tons of cultures that have a flood myth, including the Epic of Gilgamesh and one in the Bible. So which one's true?
So a lot of cultures also have gods that are similar. Like if you look at Zoroastrianism, they have, I believe it's Zoroaster himself, who's very similar to Jesus. The Chinese who were living around the same time as the flood was supposed to happen, they don't have any writings.
We have a very
of a
different
global
flood legend than the Noah story.
Yeah, very.
Sure,
and
sure.
Flood
And I'll
legends, all of these
grant you
flood
that.
legends that you're talking about are
Where's
very,
the
very
flood
different
layer
from one
where you
another.
live, Jesse? There ain't one in Spokane.
The flood layer. No, okay, so let me ask you a question. You've got all of this, all right? These are legends and myths. Yes, they are different because, like, the Epic of Gilgamesh is different than the
From
one-
which the Bible borrowed its story, by the way.
Very heavily.
Actually, you don't know that.
Yes,
But
we
here,
do.
Let me finish, though, all right? So in one of my history classes, my teacher, he said something really great. Every legend, every myth does have a kernel of truth. All right.
Yeah.
So if we have 50 flood myths all across the world, which one is true?
Wait, so do you agree that floods happen?
Oh, absolutely. But I'm talking about
So if you live in like
and tsunamis.
if you're a pre-technological civilization who lives in the floodplain area around the Nile Delta, and a flood happens that to you looks like it encompasses the whole world, is that too much of a stretch to say that they would have written a myth that says the whole world was flooded? It just seems to me, Occam's razor, what's more realistic, that people who lived in a pre-scientific time thought that the whole world was flooding because their whole area was flooded, or that the entire world was flooded, even though there are civilizations that we have writings from that don't record a flood, and that we don't see in the geologic layers? It's a huge stretch to me to say that
it really isn't though, because I don't think you've actually read these flood myths. All right,
I have. Shall we
I know you
discuss them?
have. Yeah,
I don't-
okay. They talk about a global flood and that these gods were mad at them, and they talk about the entire world being destroyed.
If you
Right?
pair
These
the
aren't-
pieces off and look at the thing, that the Egyptian case is a fine example, but so too is the Chinese case. I know directly that the creationists that try to invoke the Chinese flood misrepresent the original material. Am I supposed to, as a historian, and I have a BA in history, by the way, am I supposed to pretend that doesn't happen and go, well, it's okay for them to kind of trump it up with a weirdness? No, I can't do that.
I'm also curious if you take like, why are you accepting flood myths as like evidence for there being a flood, and taking that as good enough evidence for there being a worldwide flood despite the lack of physical evidence? And why don't you believe the other parts of their myths, like I don't know, maybe like an elephant was on a tortoise, and a tortoise, whatever their other myth might be? It just seems to me that you're picking things that seem to us intuitively to kind of mix and match, and just saying that that is evidence for something that you already believe, assuming that you're Christian or whatever religion. Again, just Occam's razor. It seems like it's much more
But it
simple
really
to say,
isn't
I
though,
live in a
because
floodplain.
yeah, but you already made an assumption that there's no data out there showing that we did have a global flood.
Oh, I'll
There-
say
don't
that
have
flat
data.
out.
Yeah,
if
there
you
is
want
no-
to discuss the
There
flood. We're
absolute-
still way away from human evolution here, by the way.
Well,
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. Okay,
We're
so
fine.
let's get,
We ought to have a discussion on the flood and get back to
Oh, but
sometime
actually,
else.
but
Get
that-
back to human evolution.
but this is human evolution though, all right? Because so in my anthropology class, right? This is where I'm getting the majority of my stuff, RJ, by the way, is
Yeah.
anthropologist, which is
I'd love to see
solely-
your source base on
Yeah,
that.
I would assume that
Solely
all these
based on-
anthropologists in your
Hold
college
on,
classes would
let's-
Hey, hold
I
on,
disagree.
do
hold on.
want to hear the rest. I think there's a lot
Yeah.
of there's a degree of interrupting, so I do want
Sorry,
to make sure
my
that we
bad.
get to hear the rest of the ideas.
Yeah, so okay, I'm not saying that they agree. Trust me, they do not agree. But this is what I'm learning in my classes, all right? About a Y chromosome bottleneck that was about 5,500 years ago to 9,500 years ago. That there are no diverse languages more than 4,500 years ago. And this is from an anthropologist who highly criticized Christian creationism, all right? And then we've got the Neolithic Revolution that's 5,500 to 10,000 years ago. All these numbers seem to line up in about a time about the global flood, the Tower of Babel, and so we can actually see even a drop in the genetics of the Y chromosome. And these are
Document that, please. Do make a point of putting up on your sources, as well as John putting up his. We're really anxious.
I'll have to ask him I have them. I just didn't know how to put it on the shared
Yeah, we wanna see all
folder.
that. Everybody can see my data field in the tip project.
So
at the website
I love
put
how
up, so.
RJ is with his little sarcasm and derision.
I'm a sarcastic, arrogant bastard. Haven't you spotted that by now?
I know. That's why I called you out on it from the very beginning, and to maybe have a normal dialogue with you. But you guys want to go back to evolution, so let's do it.
Yeah,
So,
human evolution, the topic that we were here to discuss.
no, actually, we're here to discuss the origins of humanity. Idea.
Yeah,
of
that's
evolution. So,
human. Yeah, human origins.
So I want to know from you guys, in the context of structural biology, where the geographic position of genes, even in between chromosomes, must be in specific places in order for their expression. I want to know how you guys explain that and these modifications supposedly happening when and resulting in the evolution that you support, when it is now well documented that all the way down in many instances point mutations result in either embryo death or dramatic loss of functionality?
Glad you asked, because I put a link up directly to that paper that I mentioned, Dennis et al. 2012, Evolution of Human-Specific Neural SRGAP2 Genes by Incomplete Segmental Duplication.
Okay,
Now, anytime you want to write...
You didn't listen to a word I just said.
I listened to it.
Do you understand what I mean?
I'm talking about
what I mean?
One second,
a segment.
gentlemen.
Are you
One
claiming
second.
a segmental duplication is not
You
that?
guys,
I'm not.
RJ, I'm gonna give you a chance to finish. Hold on a second. So I just want to be sure that RJ was finished at that point too. John, let's hear. RJ, were you finished?
He's not answering my question.
Okay,
I'm not giving
let's
you
just
an answer that
let's
you
just
want
give
to
him.
have.
Let's just be
I'm
sure
telling
he
you
gets
that
to.
there isn't-
Hold on,
You're not even
RJ,
addressing what
is
I'm
with
asking
you? Hold on, don't make me mute, please. So I will give you a chance, RJ, to finish that point. So I promise, John, I'll give you a chance to respond, but just want to be sure that we heard what RJ was saying there.
All the genetic issues about the origins of systems have a technical literature on them, most of which is not discussed in the anti-evolution literature. I'm sure John has lots of examples that he presents in his argument, which the reason why I want to see his reference bibliography, which I will look into. That will be very entertaining for me to do so. I put a link up to a 2012 paper which explicitly discusses how a neural specific gene is developed by segmental duplication from an earlier primate gene, and why the specific distributions of which ones we have versus the ones we find over in chimpanzees has occurred at the point mutation level. Now, if you want to do a monograph on that, I look forward to reading it.
Okay, so again, you clearly are not understanding what I said, because I was not talking about gene duplication.
That's what that gene came from.
I literally wasn't addressing that.
I know, because you don't like that either, I guess.
No, actually, I asked you the question. You just responded on something that was a completely different topic than what I was asking you a question about. So, do you know what I mean by, in the discoveries in structural biology, the DNA looping that is required for gene expression many times in cross-chromosomal manners with transcription factors?
Is any of that unique to humans?
Do you know what it is? And do you know why it is relevant?
There are layers on layers on layers of systems that how proteins are built and how they're developed.
Okay,
Are the systems that you're
clearly are not understanding what I'm talking about.
Are the systems that you're talking about unique to human beings? If they are not, they would already have been existing in prior systems all the way through the mammals at the least, and therefore it isn't relevant to how humans use them, because everything uses them.
No, the dramatic geographic differences.
What do you mean by geographic? It's like Paris versus London? What do you mean by that?
Okay, so the physical location of genes in relation to enhancers, promoters, et cetera, they are now discovering that they literally have to fold both, so that the genes can often just be expressed. Moreover, they're also now discovering that these folds also oftentimes have to happen cross-chromosomally, and that the gene that is in position A is expressed differently when it is combined with others in different geographic locations of the genome.
That's how you get variety in life.
This results in a dramatic problem in relation to using, the XYZ gene sequence is in chimp and human. However,
dramatic problem according to who?
The
one sec. I'll give you a chance,
to which
John.
I am referring to.
John, I want to give you a chance.
This is the whole point.
Who says it's a problem? Give a name.
Hold on
Tell
one
me.
sec. I just want to let people know that in maybe about 5 minutes, we'll probably switch into the question and answer session. So do want to give you a chance to respond there, John. Pardon my interruption.
Everybody. RJ clearly doesn't have a clue of what I'm actually talking about.
Oh, I'm just clueless. Okay.
Yeah, you are, because you're literally describing and trying to counter me with.
It's a problem?
Go read all the papers. Go read.
Who says it's a problem?
Again, you're asking who said it. It's literally in the folder of all the papers that I did, so I wouldn't waste time with you. This is your dodge mechanism that you do every time, RJ, and I'm calling you out on it. Because when you don't know, because you don't have a damn clue about what's being discussed and why it destroys your model. You always try to dodge and switch it and make me name a name.
We're gonna have to do a show
every time.
going through
Every time.
space. You promise to do that with me?
1 second.
Sounds fun.
I like your passion, but I do want to be sure before we wrap up, we hear any final thoughts from Shadow Dancer as well as Jeff, and then we will jump into the Q&A. I promise we're always happy to have you on again,
And
RJ
get
and
all of
Jeff.
the questions in.
I know that there's a lot of ground to cover, so we'll go to Shadow Dancer and Jeff, and then we'll wrap up with Q&A.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Again, I'm glad RJ's here because, like I mentioned, I'm a layman. I don't understand all of the really intricate scientific differences between, whatever you're talking about, John. But what I do know is that there are sources out there that probably explain all of this very well and can probably maybe not simply, but can do a pretty good job of explaining how this works and how it fits into evolution. You mentioned that you have a lot of secular sources in a folder or whatnot. I would like to see that, but I would also say I would imagine that 99.9% of these papers, the people who wrote them and who did the study and who understand it at a deeper level than any of us could ever hope to, they probably, I would imagine, all agree that evolution is real and that we are the product of evolution. I hear intelligent design a lot, but I never hear any mechanisms behind how an intelligent being would have made us. I don't really understand the mechanisms behind that. That would be interesting. I don't know if we really we're focused on the subject too much, but regardless of what we were talking about, this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed talking about all this stuff.
Stoked to hear that.
All right, so in my closing statements, I'll just say that I've run into this a lot, that we as Christians and Bible-believing Christians in Genesis are very closed-minded. And yet all I heard from our opponents was closed-mindedness. They don't want to read the papers, and they already make assumptions, even at the presentation of stuff, that, these are all not secular. They're all from your Christian indoctrination. And yet that's actually what we are seeing, because you got to remember something. We were born creationists. We were born knowing this stuff. We actually got whatever it was an argument, a question, a situation that made us question evolution, realize that we've been indoctrinated for a very long time, since 1925, since the monkey trials. And I would say this, that evolution has been trying to harmonize the concept of evolution, which means increasing complexity, with the entropy principle we see in nature, which is decreasing complexity. But thanks so much, guys. I had a great discussion tonight.
Thank you very much. And I know that everybody from both sides has another round in the chamber ready to go to fire back, but we do have to go to Q&A. So want to jump into it and say thanks so much, folks, for your questions. And thanks most of all, though, for our speakers for being here. We really appreciate them. Their links are in the description waiting for you, folks. So if you want to hear more...
Step away for a minute to get more iced tea.
That's right. RJ is getting more iced tea, but the show will continue. So thanks for your super chat. Steven Steen, our dearest benevolent troll. Nasty guy, but we love him. He says, Viva la revolution from Satan's evolution. Thank you, Steven, for
Hell
that.
Yeah, brother.
Robert Luscombe, appreciate your super chat, says, James, did you thoroughly screen these interlocutors? That's very good. So for those of you who don't recognize, that's Darth Dawkins, who usually says that, and Robert is impersonating Darth. As Darth, we always get into it. But Butt Wipe, thanks for your super chat, says, how much could a butt wipe if a butt wipe could wipe
They just
butt?
want you to embarrass yourself, James.
You can tell, folks, we read every super chat, okay?
Actually, the answer is 5, just to let you know.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Oh, I thought it was 42.
We've been
another good
mulling it over for a while. Jen S., thanks for your super chat, says, repent and believe Jesus is true love and joy. Appreciate that. Movie Theory, thanks for your super chat, said, the evolutionists already lost. Debate done.
I guess we were thoroughly destroyed by facts and logic.
Gotcha. Movie Theory is another one of our trolls. We haven't seen Michael Dresden for a while, but JPP 3030, thanks for your super chat, said, insert Spider-Man New York reference from Eric Murphy. Well, I don't get it. I should know. I feel like I should. But thanks for your super chat, Dave Gar, who said, James, the orange flash looks like a red alert from Star Trek. Every time that happens, I fear that your studio will blow up. Stay safe, please.
I thought they were calling me the orange flash because I was ginger.
Hey, so long as we don't have
Very
red
nice.
uniforms on, we're safe.
I am working on, I had mentioned earlier, folks. So basically, red, when you see a red flash, it means it's a super chat. If you see a green flash, it means we have a new subscriber, which I had seen one or two come in. So thanks so much for subscribing. And also, I'm working on it, folks. It's like, I think we're working the bugs out. It's supposed to be the case that anybody in the live chat, subscribed or not, anybody should be able to push exclamation point and then whatever color they want, and it's supposed to change the color of the room that I'm in. It's not working fully yet. It's worked a couple of times, but only like 5%. So we're working on that. So hopefully it'll be more interactive for you, and hopefully you can always make the room pink for me. I'd really appreciate that. Terry James,
You wear what you ask for, James.
that's true. Terry James, thanks for your super chat, said the 55 million date is for primate origins, not humans.
Deep in the bit there. My God, that continental drift was starting to shift up by then. That's the Eocene.
Okay, thanks for your super chat from Tioga, who says James has chaotic neutral lighting right now. Yes, it is a wild one. And Jason Burris, thanks for your super chat, said context is everything. The London Hammer is one prime example of lost provenience.
Provenance.
Provenance, yeah.
Gotcha. And this is coming from an archaeologist, in parentheses, myself.
Provenance. Damn it. Provenance.
I don't know if it's a new word I've never seen before.
It refers to the trail. You get it in art history all the time. You know, somebody comes in with a picture, you'll hear it pop up on Antiques Roadshow. Is how do you know how you got it? Grandpa has the picture he says was by Marie Antoinette. Well, how do you know? And that paper trail is the provenance.
Gotcha. Huh. All right. And thanks for your super chat. We did not read that. Terry James, thanks. They said 10 intelligent design people answer the phylogeny challenge.
Nope.
That's an R and Raw thing, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No anti-evolutionist has. In fact, ID is in an even worse
This
position.
isn't a question for you, RJ. This is a question for the other guys.
The phylogeny challenge is addressed over on the Standing for Truth channel. So if you guys want to go search Standing for Truth, there's videos on debunking the Aaron Ra's phylogeny challenge.
Gotcha.
I would
Thanks
like
for
to see
that.
that.
Appreciate your super chat from Stupid Whore Energy. She strikes again. She says, is the intelligent design side aware that wasps have evolved codes? They can do facial recognition. Different groups have evolved different codes.
I'd like to know how they know that it evolved. It's absolutely plausible and possible that they were designed that way, that they've always been that way. Same with trilobite eyes. They're very
You wanna
complex.
talk about trilobite eyes?
Eyes are actually really easy to evolve, it seems like.
They're
Oh,
very
yeah.
complex, actually.
Yeah, but I mean, anyways, we can talk about that another time. Lots of
We
things
have
have
to
eyes.
Facipid versus non-facipid eyes and the role of magnesium in their biochemistry.
Nice. Thanks for your super chat from Dearest Brandon Ardeline. Good to see you again, Brandon. Says, DNA is code? Which compiler does God use? Next up.
That's actually funny because the ribosome is kind of considered that in the translational expression of that information. It's a well-accepted premise in biology. So, I don't know. Go Google it.
Gosh,
Please do
yeah.
Google it, research it.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. And thanks as well to Slam RN, who says, I'm questioning whether this is really Slam RN, who says, James is looking hot tonight. I appreciate that. Let's see.
It's the backdrop.
Enjoy it,
James.
James.
True.
Thanks, RJ. Stupid.
James is actually auditioning to be a talk show host. That's why he's busting out the new colors.
So true.
Nobody's called me hot yet. I'm disappointed.
And no one will ever call me hot, so I've passed that.
It's coming. Don't worry. Steven Steen's here.
Oh, that takes more faith in the second coming.
Thanks for your super chat from Stupid Whore Energy as she strikes again, saying there are stereo chemical affinities between amino acids and RNA?
Put a source in on that in the live chat, or so we can see what's going on that. I'd like to see that.
Gotcha. Caleb, or Caleb as he sometimes likes to be called, thanks for your super chat, says, RJ, let your opponents / partner talk, dude. They're coming at you. But one thing I
Jeff
love about...
can tell me to shut up anytime he wants if he needs to get a word in.
I'm too polite. I'll just let it simmer in my gut for days and days until we're arch enemies.
Yeah, there we go.
I love that they've got gusto. You know, it's kind of like, I know sometimes it can be like, RJ. But you know what? We love that they have passion. And we appreciate your super chat. JPP3030 says, Maddox calling people ignorant is hilarious.
Well, I just take my arguments from secular journal sources, and in my interpretation of what it means from an origin perspective is my own. It doesn't mean that the functions that I'm referring to are not well-established discoveries.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. And thanks for your super chat, Jason Burris, who says, Shadow Dancer, what is the... There's that word again. Provenience of...
Provenance.
Are you sure?
Yes, it's provenance.
Yes, it's provenance.
Not like a province. Just think province and stretch it out a little.
That's embarrassing. Okay.
James, think divine. James, think divine providence. That's the term. That's where that comes from.
Oh, you know what it probably is? It's probably autocorrect. So that's why it says provenience on my side. So they said, what is the... Did you say providence?
Provenance.
Provenance, thank you very much, of the London Hammer. What peer-reviewed articles have been written on it? Cite sources, please.
I will definitely do that. And there have actually been tons of articles written on it. All
none peer-reviewed.
Secular, because they're trying to figure out where it comes from. How did it get there? How did it get encrusted in the rock? The rock is dated very old. They've tested the metal composition on it. And considering the age of the rock, they say, seculars say, that humans didn't have that type of technology. And yes, I will cite that source.
Gotcha. Thanks so much for your super chat from Stupid Horn Energy. Trying to bring the hammer down again, says, are RNA the most important part of the ribosome, which supports RNA world?
Was that like ARE? Was it the
Um,
beginning of the sentence?
it's lowercase r and then uppercase RNA.
I know what they're referring to. The core of the ribosome is an RNA molecule. It's not a protein.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there's a variety of things, and it has been well established that the premise of it just being a catalyst is not substantial enough for the RNA world hypothesis to be substantiated.
Would sources on that be included in your reference bibliography that you are intending to offer to us so that we may observe it?
Yes, RJ, he said that earlier.
Good. Oh, good. Then I'll be looking forward to that.
I mean, RJ, your snarky little comments.
I am snarky.
Really are.
And you're pompous. Live with it.
I'm the pompous one. When
Yeah.
calling you out on being an asshole.
Before this one
Yeah, I
goes
call you
off the
out for not
rails.
doing fact checking.
All right. Hold on a second. Hake, thanks for your super chat. Hake from the Buddies with Jesse Lee Peterson says, fun, sassy stream, even if mind-numbing. Ah, geez, Hake, why you gotta cut us down like that? Jeremy T, thanks for your super chat, says, let me read this, I've got it here. I'm a programmer and I never have huge blocks of random text in programs the way we see in DNA. Coders don't have a pattern of including blocks of random text. That's bad coding.
Actually, what they're they're discovering that a lot of things they thought were just random blocks, they're actually starting to discover functions for. And beyond that, many of the duplications they're discovering are making the genetic code more robust and stable. So actually, you're incorrect from a programming perspective, and there's actually quite a few papers on that. You might want to go check out my folder because there's several on that exact subject of how those things that you're referring to actually support the robustness of the genetic code.
Well, it's just a separate issue. There are 1.4 million ALUs in our genome. How many of those do you claim are functional?
We've got to keep moving. I'm gonna give John a quick chance. I'm gonna give John a quick chance to answer that, but then we do have to keep moving because we've got a lot of questions.
How about you and I have a debate on this exact subject?
Set it up.
Oh yeah, I just can't help but love live debate challenges.
But hang on, James, 1 second. RJ, the only way I will ever debate you ever again is when we have timed rebuttals, because it is so obnoxious being interrupted constantly with the same stupid questions that have been responded to over and over again, rather than any substantive response.
And the feeling's mutual.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we're all on the same page then. Perhaps that debate will be here. No matter where it is, we'll tweet it out, folks, so that you can see it. So, Speed of Sound of Gravity, thanks for your super chat, said, ask John Maddox why he always promises to post his sources and yet never posts any sources, no matter how hard we try to embarrass him into doing it.
I don't know how many times I have to repeat myself and state that my sources are in a publicly available folder. So perhaps you don't have the cognitive ability to comprehend semantic meaning of the words that are coming out of my mouth.
James, will the link to that public folder be in the video description of this finished video when it's posted finally?
I'm happy to post it in the description if John sends it to me. And
sure, it's in the live chat.
Next up,
the live chat's going to disappear. No one's going to be able to access that. It needs to be in the video description.
I can't put it in the description at the moment, but if he wants to put it in the live chat now, he can, and then I can put it in there right after. Rooster Farts, LOL, says Tioga. Thanks, weirdo. Okay, thanks for your super chat. Movie theory as well.
That's Mr. Weirdo. Let's keep it polite.
That's we've got. This is says this is our regular troll. It says James, end this and put RJ and Jeffy out of their misery. Appreciate you guys have a sense of humor. We've got a lot of these characters. Brandon Ardoline, thanks for your super chat. Said the only great flood is when James appears. I don't quite understand. Some sort of
heck. One of the people putting up the super chats is Dildo Baggins. I mean, poor James has to read these things.
Oh, it's some sort of sexual innuendo.
Yeah.
You guys.
There better be.
Oh yes, very much a sexual innuendo.
All right, enough of that. Steve, thanks for your super chat. Says brown chicken, brown cow. Thanks for that. Another one of those trolls. Stupid horror energy though is coming at you guys tonight. John and Shadow Dancer. She says, why can't you creationists agree about what is human among the pre-human fossils? That in and of itself proves they are transitional.
Well, then now she's just making an assumption that's not even there. We actually do agree.
No, you don't.
RJ, excuse me. Neanderthals and Denisovans, we've already shown that they're human. They are human. They look human. And we are actually more in agreement on our side in creationism than evolution is. Evolution is all over the place.
Next
I'm sorry, that's just not
true. I can
true.
find my chart here.
We can have a debate on that too. Brandon, let's see. We got Brandon's.
Wayne Gish would contradict himself even between one source and another.
We've got to keep moving. JPP3030 says Shadow Dancer is making flat Earth arguments.
Sure, whatever you say, buddy.
Thanks for your. Glad you guys let it like water off the duck's back. Jasmine Jacob, thanks for your super chat. Says Shadow Dancer, interesting points. I disagree with you, but I'd share a foxhole with you. United States Marine Corps vet here. Semper Fi. Shout out to atheists in foxholes. Thanks for that, Jasmine Jacob. And
Semper Fi, brother.
Dildo Baggins, thanks for your super chat. We're always very professional here, folks. Says, did you interview these interlocutors, James? It's almost like Darth is behind all of these accounts. He's just coming back to harass me.
I do have to agree that you are just the worst moderator ever.
That's right. I just love Darth. I can't get enough of him, and for some reason, when Darth gets all worked up, I don't know what it is. I seriously just can't help but laugh. And
James, you turn into a little schoolgirl when
I laugh like a
that laugh,
schoolgirl.
man. I was listening to that debate while I was driving, and when you started laughing or chuckling like that, I was cracking up driving down the street.
Same.
It was priceless.
Darth gets really angry when people challenge his script and he can't read off his script. That's just one of his things.
I just can't help it. He's got passion. I gotta give him that. Stockholm, thanks for your super chat, says, for the ID team, says, how does intelligent design explain antibiotic resistance to bacteria or diseases jumping to new species? Punishment from God?
Well, the antibiotic resistance is actually a interesting element of same thing with our immune system and our ability to adapt to different variables. It goes back around to the premise of the dynamic system and the relative equivalent of AI that enables a dynamic response to be created on the fly, which is unlike how Jeff tries to say this isn't computer technology, machines, et cetera, it's exactly what we're trying to accomplish with our technologies. And we're actually trying to copy what we see in biology to reach the same result, failing miserably at it, but trying to. But being able to do that kind of stuff on the fly requires incredible computation ability, which kind of is the whole reason there's a entire study field of biological computation to explain how these things are able to be accomplished.
Must move on to the next one. Stupid Horde Energy, thanks for your super chat. Perhaps throwing a softball for you, RJ. She says, what do you think of the fact that the flagellum evolved from a secretion system?
Oh, yeah, that's a fascinating one. In fact, we're now getting more and more material. They finally found a homology for the motor proteins, too, which had always been a little bit of puzzlement. And by the way, other than intelligent design, non-young Earth creationist Scott Minnick down at the University of Idaho, none of the people doing the work in this field are anti-evolutionists.
Gotcha. And thanks for your super chat from JPP 3030 says, if we are, quote, intelligently designed, why is there cancer?
Well,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Shadow.
Okay, so we take the Bible as literal. And so when Adam and Eve sinned, it cursed the world. That's where it comes from. It's a very simple explanation, and there's really no other explanation for it. We see cancer in dinosaurs. We see all kinds of degenerative stuff, not evolutionary stuff.
Gotcha.
Jeff has his finger up.
Yeah, is it okay if I respond to that real quick? I would just say there are species that either don't have cancer or have very, very, very high resistance to cancer, like naked mole rats. So it is possible. And also the idea of like original sin is basically because the whole idea is that they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which means they didn't know what good or evil was before. So God is punishing us for something that somebody did. Even if it is true, it just seems like God's a completely immoral monster, and I don't want to have any part of that.
And the systems that generate a lot of cancers
second.
and other diseases
want
are
to,
often derived from the systems
hold
doing
on,
it.
RJ.
They had to have been designed
I do
to
want
do
to
that
give,
begin
given
with.
that the super chat was originally for our intelligent design guests, I want to give them the last word on this one. So if you want to respond to Jeff's comment, either John or Shadow Dancer, you may. Otherwise, we can move to the next one.
I will. I'll make a quick comment. Don't cherry pick information. Just because I use cancer doesn't mean that's the only thing that we ever use. I'm just pointing it out as an example because that was their example.
Say you did.
Gotcha.
Yeah, no, I was trying to just
appreciate. Hold on, just to keep moving. Otherwise, we're gonna kind of spiral down another rabbit hole, and I wish we could, but just to try to get through as many questions as possible. Puffaluffagus, thanks for your super chat. Said the Sentinelese are 15,000 to 30,000 years removed from the rest of the human population and haven't mastered fire yet. How can intelligent designers explain that problem away?
We explain away by just looking at history. We can see the technology that they had back in. They found an ancient Egyptian tomb that had no soot inside of it. And this tomb is, 2000 BC, 900 years after they built some of the largest pyramids. And what were they using? And this tomb is very deep underneath ground. They've got other things that they were using. The Babylonian battery was rejected like 50 years ago because they couldn't have had that kind of technology because they assumed based on deep time and evolution, the man couldn't have been that smart back then. So they just reject and remove a lot of stuff.
Gotcha.
That doesn't really have anything to do with evolution, but yeah.
We must keep moving. we have next up, Club. Thanks for your super chat. Said enjoyed hearing SD's angle and approach. Shadow Dancer, in other words. That they said would like to see another debate with a topic specific to her specialty. Well, we'd be honored to have you back on, Shadow Dancer. It's been a true pleasure tonight.
And if you ever need somebody to debate that with you, I would love to. It was fun talking to you.
That would be so dank. Speaking of Jeff, Corporal Annan, thanks for your super chat, who says, Jeff is hot though, wink face.
I got one. All you gotta do is beg.
Yeah. Very nice. I like it. Stupid Whore Energy, thanks for your super chat. Said, are you aware that many I think it's pronounced, is it pronounced archaebacteria?
Archaebacteria, yeah.
Are entrapped in chert, and many of those are known to be from the Precambrian. And chert is spelled C-H-E-R-T.
C-H-E-R-T, yeah.
Thank you. I think that's for our intelligent design guess.
Still relies on the supposition of old Earth and it being relevant in relation to when life came into existence.
Gotcha. And thanks for your super chat this one's from Dildo Baggins, who says, to all the Raptor baits, ramen. Must be a fan of Skylar Fiction. Thanks for your super chat 2 seconds. I'm almost there. We got the one about Jeff being hot. Okay. And then Ryu Zensky, thanks for your super chat, said, ID side. Prove you know evolution. Name the 3 types of evolution. And then they said, I'm not making this up. They said, by the way, also, RJ and Jeff are hot. What religion, if any, are you defending? I joined late. I think they must be asking the ID side what religion they're defending. But the question they asked is, prove you know evolution. Name the 3 types of evolution first.
Okay, so there's the Big Bang Theory, the Nebula Theory, and then the Origin of Life Theory. And that's not including all the side theories. I'm defending Christianity.
Gotcha.
And beyond that, you've got, or in conjunction with that, you got the cosmology, or cosmological evolution, abiogenesis / chemical evolution, and then evolution in the context of what we've been discussing tonight.
Wouldn't the 3 types be more like divergent, convergent, and parallel?
We must keep
we
moving.
need more.
I'll give you a chance to respond, John, or Shadow Dancer, and then we must keep moving. I didn't mean to interrupt you, John. Sorry.
That's all right. Let's go on to the next one.
Next up, Stupid Horde Energy. Thanks for your super chat. Said programmers strive to keep things simple, not redundant or complex.
I'm pretty sure I answered that one earlier, and the discoveries that they're making, go watch some of the videos and read the papers coming out of Cambridge University and the Microsoft funded genetic research departments, where they're actually becoming more and more blown away with how efficient it's actually being executed as they're learning the sheer number of multiple functions that are operating simultaneously in the same data set. Which is something that we wish we could pull off. So go research some of that stuff and get back to me.
Next
Can
up,
I make
thanks.
a comment?
Yes.
Really fast. So I just want to ask her, has she ever even seen programming? Because that stuff is very complex. And if you mess up one thing, it does not work. I watched a friend learn it. That's very complex.
Gotcha. And
Unlike life, which is much
thanks
easier.
for your super chat from Sphere itself says, whatevs, you're still sexy, James. Appreciate that, Sphere itself. As I mentioned, that is Earl the Postman from Alabama. Always appreciate that from the internet. Justin Geyer, appreciate your super chat. Said, ID, can you explain ERVs or endogenous retroviruses? Sorry if asked earlier, I came in late.
Tune in to my one-on-one debate with RJ Never Shuts Up Downard about the discussion of ALUs, retrotransposons, ERVs, etc., etc.
Gotcha.
And then read the technical literature beyond his little box.
Next up,
You don't even know what my argument is, man. You're always saying that I'm behind my little box. Yeah, you don't even know half the stuff that I'm talking about, and you're going to say that I'm small information. Okay, let's go, bro.
Next up, appreciate your super chat from Josiah Hansen says, so cancer because magic curses.
Well, we never invoked magic, so okay.
Gotcha. And thanks for your super chat from Speed of Sound of Gravity. Says the only flood that has occurred here is a flood of Maddox's ignorance, in all caps, and lack of comprehension regarding genetics and biosemiotics. From Immutable Destiny, but he made me pay.
Yeah, so let's go back to our debate, Speed of Sound, and your strict materialist mindset. And, well, everybody just go watch that debate. It's on my channel, it's on SFT, and you can listen to some of the stunningly closed-minded and borderline, and I don't even have a good word for that. Just go listen to go watch the debate.
Next up, thanks for your super chat from Dearest Ryuzensky. Also, the person who said Jeff is hot, by the way, said nothing else to say, just wanted to give you money. Well, appreciate that support. Really do, Ryuzensky.
Nice work if you can get it.
And we are excited, by the way, as this, it reminds me, this Thursday we'll have Kent Hovind on, and that will be a special one where we usually try to use super chats for things like, you know, whether it be like an upgrading our tech. Like, I have gotten a DSLR, so when we have in-person debates after the pandemic at some point, we actually will have good video quality for that, so I'm excited about that. But we try to do a monthly charity stream. This month, it's going to be Kent Hovind's debate this coming Thursday. All of the super chats that come in during the Kent Hovind debate will be going to COVID-19 relief efforts. So that's exciting. Good. Should be a great event. I'm sure RJ will be in the chat, very disgruntled and mocking Kent Hovind.
Oh, yeah. I want to see Kent discuss fossils.
Kent is my dream debate. I would love to talk to Kent.
So RJ was actually, like, I think, no joke, like our first debate that we have on this channel that you can find. I'm pretty sure if you go back to like our oldest material.
September.
Yes, it was September of, did you say it was 2018?
18, yeah, it's been 2 years. Almost 2 years.
Wow, that was the first
How time
debate
flies when you're having fun.
Yes. RJ and Kent Hovind, their debate is in the video library for Modern Day Debate. That was a fun one.
Oh, I'll stick the link in because I think I've got it up in my video.
Yes, it's got a lot of views. People really enjoy it. I still see comments coming on that too, by the way. People are still watching it. Next up, Stupid Whore Energy, thanks for your super chat, says, ha ha ha, if you mess up one thing and it breaks, you are a horrible programmer. Gotcha. Thanks for that.
Yeah, that's why you have redundancies, which is the same thing as we have in the genetic code. So if that's a good thing that you would do and have fallback positions in computer code, why then do evolutionists argue that the same thing in the genetic code is somehow crappy programming?
Nah, all right. Next up.
No, it's the parts other than that that's the weird programming if it were programmed.
Give you a chance to respond, John, if you want. Then we've got to go to the next one.
RJ doesn't even understand why it is a programming language, so I don't really think that you.
No, I don't agree with your characterization.
We must move to the next one.
Again, my point of that's why the people around the world agree.
Next up, JPP3030, thanks for your super chat, who says Maddox is funny triggered. Are you triggered, John?
No, I'm not triggered.
Okay, that's good. Thanks for that. Josiah Hansen, appreciate your super chat, said, by the way, the 3 types answer was divergent, convergent, and parallel evolution.
I think evolutionists don't actually even understand their own theories.
Incorrect.
I talk about that on my channel. RJ, be respectful. Shh.
Next
I am
up,
respectful, but I'm not going to pretend you know what you're doing.
Thanks for your super chat from, let's see, Kalab, appreciate it, said, keep up the good work, Maddox and Shadow Dancer. I enjoyed it. You got a fan out there. And with that, I do have one more question. Brian Stevens, thanks for your patience. So sorry I'm behind here. Said, Patreon comment, appreciate your support on Patreon, Brian, and said the 400 million year old hammer was dated from the present to 700 years ago. Parentheses, Cuban Glenn J. 14th of July, 2006. So it sounds like a citation.
Yes, I actually did read that one, and there were other citations that say that it was actually much older than that. So there's definitely some controversy on it. There's controversy about any of these old objects, including the aluminum, which nobody even mentioned whatsoever. But you know,
Gotcha. And thanks for your super chat. Ryuzinski, same person who said Jeff is hot, said, when do you plan to have a trial? I'll never let that go. When do you have a... I saw the kiss. That was nice. When do you plan to have a trial by combat between evolutionists and creationists? Please restrict the creationists from using magic in the arena. Trollish.
I only fight in the arena of Fortnite.
Thank you very much. And thanks to your super chat, Dildo Baggins says, it says, according to ID, quote, God set us up to fail. Why would an all-loving God set his most prized possession or prized creation, to be tempted by evil? And Maddox, you need to chill.
so I'll tell you this: God actually set us up to succeed, but he put in fail safes because he's omnipotent, all-knowing. He already knew that we were going to sin. And I always ask people this question: if you know you're going to have children, would you want to be a part of their lives? God already knew that he was going to create us and that we were going to sin, but he still wanted to be a part of our lives. So he put in redundancies in us, kind of like a computer program, to make sure that, one, we stayed safe with stuff, and that, we wouldn't die immediately.
Gotcha.
Did he know that our teeth could kill us for hundreds of thousands of years?
And beyond that, in the context from a philosophical and a religious perspective, if our souls are immortal, then the things that the evolutionists view as these most horrific things of all time, how would anybody possibly do this? Well, if I know that you have an immortal soul and are going to have eternal existence, then, and this is a time as a learning experience of that existence, then what is viewed as a negative takes on an entirely different context. And however, from the evolutionary worldview, they are dramatically magnified, and they can't comprehend how any of this would be possible to occur.
Gotcha. Thanks for that. And thanks for your Patreon comment from Adam Abilia. Appreciate it. Said, they said, I have a statement for the ID team. Cherry pick science much?
I wasn't cherry picking science. I was putting out a variety of points on that look at it from a big picture perspective rather than just hyper focusing on one. And unfortunately, my opponents didn't actually respond to my questions. They shifted gears and tried to go down different paths rather than actually address the questions that were being presented.
Disagree.
Let's see, we have Ed Freeze reading this comment because I'm like super flattered. Said, James equals Captain Jonathan Archer. Change my mind. I am so flattered. Thank you so much.
Not bad comparison for looks, yeah.
Maybe a little bit. I've heard it once before. Okay, so thanks. Sorry
go for Quantum Leap if you prefer that option.
My sad strivings for attention. Maynard Saves, thanks for your super chat. Said RJ can reach down you. I'm a little confused by this. RJ can reach down you, smack that smirk off of Kent.
If it's an allusion to the debate, I will say that he didn't take kindly to my calling him a bottom feeder.
They're talking about the actual video. He's above Kent, so he's saying reach down and smack Kent's face on the video stream.
It was an aggressive one. I remember that. That is, I think, where maybe Kent had the SpongeBob shtick before that, but I think that was where he really hammered the SpongeBob stuff, maybe for the first time. And yes, truth begets heresy. I can't. Please don't stop saying this. They said James equals Scott Bakula. Thank you so much. Yeah. Dildo Baggins, thanks for your super chat. Said ID is like the One Ring. It will destroy the user. Are you gonna take that from Dildo Baggins, you guys?
No. So I view the world and the incredible technologies that enable my existence and the ability to have comprehension and even to be engaging in this right now to be the result of a higher power using their intelligence to enable my existence. And it also gives me the ability to see much more to what my purpose is and meaning of life. So, given the fact that people who believe in God tend to live longer and have much lower rates of suicide and a variety of other issues, I'm not really sure which mindset and which worldview is causing more destruction of the user.
Gotcha. Thanks for
Okay.
your super chat. We had one that just flew in. Ryuzinski is asking Jeff, real quick, what amp or pedals do you use?
I have a Gibson Les Paul Epiphone SG, and then the amp is a Line 6 Spider 3 120 watt, and then I have a modulator for that comes with like a wah pedal and stuff, and I use a Boss RC3 looping pedal and a Boss DD8 delay pedal.
Gotcha.
And we can all agree the pedals were intelligently designed.
So yes, we can. That is true.
Gotcha. And want to say thanks so much, folks. It's been a huge pleasure. We got to let these guests get to sleep. Is anybody on the Eastern Coast? It must be 11:15 over there. Is anyone?
I'm on Central.
I'm Mountain Time.
Pacific
Wow,
here.
me too. Okay, cool.
Actually, you might be in the same city as me, James.
No way. Which city are you in?
Denver.
Oh, wow. I'm actually in Denver right now. I'm living in technically Westminster. So,
I live in Lockbuoy. Do you know where that's at?
Hey,
No.
James, Super Energy just dropped in their super chat.
I don't know where that is, but I surely will find out. I just moved down here. So, thanks for your super chat. Stupid Whore Energy. Says, by the way, Eagles wouldn't have succeeded in dropping the One Ring. They would have been stopped by the Ring Demons. How do you like them apples, John?
I call out Stupid Whore Energy. I will debate you on that.
We need to bring Stephen Colbert in. He's a super expert on Lord of the Rings.
Next up, so thank you very much, folks. It has been a fun one. Do want to say a huge thanks to our guests. They're linked in the description, folks, so if you want to hear more, or hey, maybe you just want to give them a hard time, well, now's your chance. Our links are right below. And want to say thanks so much for our audience being here. You guys always make it fun. Henry Hansen's over in Colorado Springs. That's what I'm talking about. Australia or where you're from, we want to let you know. We hope you feel welcome here, folks. Christian, atheist, evolution, ID, you name it. We really do appreciate you hanging out with us. And so, once again, one final thank you to our guests before we shut her down for the night. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. This was an absolute blast. I appreciate it.
And remember that when we get up tomorrow, none of anything that we've said here will have changed any of the scientists' minds.
Thank you, James, for hosting us tonight.
My pleasure. Absolutely. So thanks so much. Keep sifting out the reasonable from the unreasonable. Take care.